Welcome, from Mind to Meeples. This is a discussion with our panel regarding concept, that initial idea that pops in your mind, all the way to getting what you see in front of you, a packaged board game ready to go. My name is Jim Kelly. For the purposes of SFGE, I am the tabletop crew chief. I'm in charge mainly of the gaming area out here. But I also do other duties like the demos, panel, as you can tell. Before we begin, there's a couple business items they wanted me to review through. If you don't have a program, you can get one where you got your badge. They want us to thank some of our sponsors. One of them I'm glad to thank. It's Geek Dad. I'm a writer for Geek Dad. We have about 60 on-staff writers. We write on everything geek related, but I specifically write on games, board games, that kind of thing. And Geek Dad is one of our sponsors. So for the film, thanks Geek Dad. What I want to do is I want to go down the line here and let my panelists know, let you know who they are, where they're from, and basically what they're going to be talking about today in terms of their game. Okay? We're going to talk for about 40-45 minutes. I'm going to try to leave enough time at the end if you have questions. If we've sort of run out of steam, we'll open it up to questions early, okay? So we're going to start with David Lupo. Hi, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your gaming experience with relation to creating a game?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you were saying, my name is David Lupo, and I am a game designer that a few years ago put out a game, Addictive Alchemy, on Kickstarter. It did very well. We doubled our goal in just about every stretch goal. And I've had a lot of fun coming to cons and conventions like this and demoing it as well. And I actually have about 6 games that I'm working on at the moment. The next one I'm looking to publish is the one that I brought some cards in here for. It's called Yokai. That's more about Japanese ghosts, spirits, and monsters, and things like that. So I'll be running demos for that in the game room as well. Please remember to send me. And I'm also collaborating with Jason Stone on a game, and he'll talk a little bit about, but I do want to say up front that I don't like train games as a theme or mechanics, and I'm very upset with Jason because he's successfully designed 2 games featuring trains that I enjoy. So let that be a lesson. You should always try something new.
Thanks, Dave. My name is Jason Stone. I'm local to here. I have self-published 5 titles through my own Jason Stone Games outfit. The one I'm working on that Dave mentioned is called Fallen Flags, and we'll talk a bit about that in the convo to come, and I'll be demoing that later. I've been designing games seriously for about 7 years.
My name is Joseph Butler, and I designed Meeple, which is a game that I kickstarted and I've been developing for about 5 years. And yeah, I love designing games, but Meeple has kind of been my baby for quite a long time, and so that should be coming out later this year.
Will?
Hello, my name is Will Kenyon. We actually all hang out all the time, so they got a bunch of panelists that actually know each other. I am actually from a slightly different background than these guys. I'm actually primarily I have been a freelance writer and editor for about 18 or 19 years. And stumbled into game design because I love games. I've done work for Decipher, Iron Crown Enterprises. I've written articles for Inquest magazine, stuff like that. So I've been peripherally doing that for a long time, and then I actually was asked to work on the writing and development of this game, Mythos Tales. It was previously a print and play by a guy from Manchester, England named Hal Eccles. And Hal had this free thing that was very popular on print and play sites and stuff like that, and then a company called 8th Summit, which is based in Lawrenceville, Georgia, locally, contracted with him to make the game bigger and bring it to have a bigger audience and monetize it and stuff like that. But the game was heavy text, and they needed somebody to come in and create text. So I jumped in, did a lot of writing for it, got into a lot of the design and development. I've designed games. I have a tendency. I'm going to stop hogging the mic in just a second. I have a tendency to go toward IPs, intellectual properties, which means that I'm taking a lot of risks. I had a game accepted by Z-Man Games years ago based on a Stephen King intellectual property that just fell apart because we couldn't find the license. And now I'm working on a Firefly game, expansions for a Firefly game. So I get to go. I go into IPs a lot. There is no real IP for this. This is Lovecraft. We can talk about that later. But that's kind of my note.
Gotcha. The title of this panel is Mind to Meeple. So my first question to you, and feel free to sort of jump amongst yourselves, I want to know ideas. Somebody has an idea for a game. How many ideas do you guys go through before you find that diamond in the rough? Or were any of you lucky enough to find an idea that immediately hit, and you were able to run with it?
Yeah, so I love that kind of question, because one of the things that I've kind of learned during the game design process, and I find it applies to a lot of parts of life, is that everybody has good ideas. I don't want to belittle the idea of having a good idea, but there are a dime a dozen. And so the real challenge when it comes to making a board game is making that idea live up to its potential, and sometimes even exceeding that potential. And so if you have a good idea and you come across a project that you feel like might become your baby or something like that, definitely embrace it, definitely explore it, and definitely play with that, the mechanics and the themes or whatever is drawing you to that idea. But also play around with other ideas, because especially if you're just starting out with game design, your first design it's never going to be the best. Maybe there's that one miracle kid that pulls one off out of the gate on their first try. But you're going to want to work on multiple projects over time. I recommend working on, like I said, I have 6 going on right now. But that might be a lot for some people. But the more that you work on, the better your games will get. The better the better flow, the more lessons you'll learn. You'll get better at demoing games and getting feedback from people. So building up experience for yourself quickly by trying a lot of different avenues and exploring a lot of different things is critical. And I have a project that's probably about 4 or 5 years old now. It's temporarily retired, and it's sort of my passion project. And I've learned so much more since I first started it that I've been thinking about going back to it sometime soon and rebuilding it from scratch with all the lessons learned that I've had through Addictive Alchemy, Yokai, and my other projects. So the short story is definitely embrace the idea, but explore lots of ideas, and don't be afraid to put some down and come back to it later.
Jason, you got any thoughts?
I'll just throw 35 seconds in to say that in addition to that, idea, as Dave said, everyone's got good ideas. The monster about the whole process is execution. My portfolio, I have a red plastic portfolio thing that I've had for about 18 years, and it's full of games that I started. And they all ran into the same problem, which I call the so what problem. That you basically have something, and it's kind of neat, but then you start messing with it, it's like, well, what's it doing? It's not doing anything, so what? So, indeed, embrace multiple ideas, but I think ideas, always go into ideas with the first thought in your mind being, well, how do they execute? Because that's where the process gets very sticky.
Yeah, well, I really try to value or just kind of embrace my ideas, especially the moment of inception of an idea. And sometimes I'll just have a period where I get really excited about a certain mechanism or really excited about a certain game, and I've got a picture of it in my mind, what makes it exciting that is not necessarily going to sustain over time. So I kind of have to take a snapshot of that idea and preserve it. Because over time things can, you can forget what were the details that made this game concept really good. So I really try to do that. And then at the same time, a huge part of my design process is cutting away things that I love. And so one of the signs that I feel like I'm in an interesting direction is when it hurts really badly to cut something from a game. This is an idea that I love and I've experimented with and developed with. and cutting it off is like losing something, losing a friend, you know, it's like losing something that I really cared about. And then the really interesting thing that's been happening to me more lately is how, if those ideas were sound, maybe they're going to find a new form in the future. So, you know, you may have an idea that really is awesome, and just there's something slightly wrong about the execution of it. And so you cut it, but you still remember that idea, you still love that idea, you know, you miss it, and then you bring it back when things are right for it, or when you find the missing piece that connects it properly to the design you're working on.
Anything to add?
Yeah, a couple things. One thing is, how many of you guys play board games regularly? Right? So that's one of the things. As I was coming through college and learning how to write and edit, one of the things that got pounded into me by college professors was you can't be a writer if you don't read. So, I mean, I'm a voracious reader. By the same token, you can't design board games if you don't play them. And so you got to get into them. You got to get into the meaty ones, light ones, play a whole wide variety. I have a reputation amongst our gaming group of being playing heavy games. And yet, I have a design that a company called Zafty is going to publish probably next year, which you guys can come play this afternoon if you want to, because I need help with it. And it's a party game. It's, you know, it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes to play. Not the 8 hours that I have a reputation for playing. I do want to, I'm going to go ahead and just have a little fun with this. Let me tell you about where I got a couple of ideas. And this is, I believe in the zeitgeist. I believe that they're out there, and we just got to grab them. I woke up one morning with a completely mapped out game. I dreamt it. Completely mapped out, thematically, everything. I went and my daughter was playing video games in the video game playroom, and I ran in and I grabbed a bunch of index cards and a bunch of dice and a bunch of stuff, and was like, "Daddy's got to make this game." And I etched out the whole game in like 20, 30 minutes. The game is heretofore unpublished, but it got picked up by one company who was going to publish it, but then a similar game came out of the blue, out of the pipeline, Zeitgeist. A similar game came out of the blue, out of the pipeline, and scared the publisher off. That game did not do very well, so my game is back into play. But that game, I had to take that idea that I had and scribbled and put on index cards and stuff, and it has been play tested. And these two guys I know have played it. Oh, actually, all three of these guys have played it. And it's been play tested and vetted, and things have been cut, like Joseph said, and moved around and stuff like that. It's gotten better and better over time. But it started with me just getting up in the morning and going, "Holy crap, I got it." You know, real quick, another game. 3 or 4 MomoCons ago. You guys know what MomoCon is?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was helping a couple of friends of ours do this crash course of like this 2-hour game design thing. And in the crash course, I came up with this name for a game. And an idea for the game, I'll go ahead and say it, because it's called Thespionage. And it's basically a backstabbing game where a bunch of people are putting on a play, a community play, and they're trying to, they got to put on the play, but then they want to be the star of the play. So there's all this, and Zev from WizKids told me that he loved the name so much that if I got a good game for it, he would publish it. So far that has
So you're telling me a name.
A name.
Just a name alone, the idea, the concept of the name was enough to get somebody interested.
Mm-hmm. That name's awesome.
It is awesome. And it's copyrighted.
Yeah, it certainly is. Anyway, so that's just an example of where ideas come from and what you do with them once they occur to you. They will come to you out of the blue sometimes but the reason they come to me, the ideas come to me easily. The reason they do is because I play games all the time.
Let me jump off.
I just want to add on to something that Will said that's important as well. Is in that story he talked about how he very quickly started writing things down and getting something playable. That's absolutely critical. Your game should not look pretty in its first prototype. Most games and game ideas, you probably can go from idea to something playable in around 2 hours. Yeah. I have a philosophy for games, and I learned this one the hard way, to be honest with you. The first time I took a game to seriously tried to put it out there, I printed out cards and had cool little potion vials and things like this. It wasn't this, it was actually going to be the prequel, now that I've rewritten the game. But I put it out there, and it was completely untested and unvetted. It looked gorgeous, but the game was just nowhere near ready to look that good. And so the feedback I got was appropriate for how good it looked, which was worthless feedback for what I needed at that time. And so no cards or stickers, just tokens that look nothing like what they're going to represent in the final version. All of that is perfect because you want to get it in front of people as quickly as possible. That said, definitely, Jason Stone has a term that I like, run some simulations, play the game by yourself, pretend to be 2 or 3 other people playing the game. Because that's the first way to make sure that when you put it down in front of somebody, it's actually going to be worth their while. Sorry, just a must.
I'm going to hit you guys with a nitty-gritty question here, something that I thought about. Raise your hand if you've ever thought about, hey, I'd like to make a board game. I know I have. It's a dream of mine. It's a dream of mine. The question I got for you is this: those of us who play games, we understand the concept of game mechanics. Every game has a mechanic or two. How important is it to you guys when you come up with an idea? Do you ever think to yourself, okay, this is a great game idea, but it's got to have a unique mechanic? Are you concerned with having a unique mechanic, or just do you see games that have a mechanic you might like to incorporate? And how do you feel as a game designer? Do you feel like you're copycatting, or do you feel like there's only so many game mechanics? And there are popular ones, right? We see a lot of games that have a similar style. My question to you, I guess, is this. When you're thinking about developing a game, are you leaning more towards, can I create a unique mechanic that no one's ever seen before, or does it not matter? The idea is so good that I can take any mechanic and apply it to it.
Yeah, if I can start.
Yeah.
I'm showing my age, and some of you look old enough to remember it. How many of you all know who Mark Goodson was?
The game show?
Yeah. Mark Goodson was the game show producer. He and Bill Todman. And Mark Goodson once said in an interview that creating a game show was like creating a new sport. But the truth of the matter really is that many of the programs he created and his competitors, at some point there is a natural degree of borrowing. For example, Mark Goodson's first game show was called Winner Take All. It was the very first game show where contestants buzzed in to answer a question. And it was the first game show where you had a returning champion who every time he won, he got to play again. Well, that stuck around. In 1961, Bob Stewart, who worked for Goodson and Todman, created a game called Password. And if you won the game on Password, you played a bonus round called the Lightning Round. Guess what game show had a bonus round before Password? None. And by the time Mark Goodson died, anytime you pitched a game to Mark Goodson, Goodson's first answer was, what's the bonus game? So there is a degree where you have to accept that there's a prior art. And some mechanics are indeed hot and can give a nudge. If you have something really unique, that's cool and awesome. But there is a prior art. And the issue is more about, a copycat when you see one. To use one more Mark Goodson analogy, their first huge hit was What's My Line? And their producer, Alan Sherman, came up with a game called I've Got a Secret. Mark Goodson said, well, that's a lot like What's My Line? And Alan Sherman said, well, if you don't copycat What's My Line, somebody else will. But at the end of the day, when that's happening. That's why there's 1,000 people that think they have the next Monopoly and the next Scrabble. You have to accept there's a prior art, but the idea is you just want to add that something. What is that thing that makes my game neat to do? Now, some people on this panel are very bright at coming up with really unique things, like the guy sitting next to me here, and they can elaborate on their more unique approaches. But there is a sense of understanding the prior art and respecting the prior art.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I'll just say that for me, I kind of come at it from a little bit different perspective, maybe, where I'm trying to kind of find an idea or a mechanism that will get me to want to test play it constantly. And so I'm trying to get a game to a point where I'm kind of addicted to it. That's sort of like my goal in getting a game off the ground. So for me, it's kind of like I need a unique enough experience from the game in order for me to want to devote all the time that goes into it, because it is so much time. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and it's just an expenditure of thoughts and resources, and you're using your components and all this kind of thing. So for me to make it worth it, it's got to be some kind of experience that I want to have on a regular basis. So I kind of feel like if it's a good experience for me, I hope that will translate out and be a good experience for other people.
I want to hit this. I want to hit all of you on this one, okay? As someone who might want to develop a board game, you got to start somewhere. Do you guys have any resources, websites, organizations that you looked to early in the process for help, for flat-out advice? Anything you could recommend to someone here who wants to try their hand at it, but doesn't quite know where to start?
If I can tack on to what Joseph said.
Yeah, please.
Sorry. I agree with Joseph. When you're designing a game, I like to follow what I call the 200 rule, and that is if you can't play the game 200 times yourself, it can be an amazing game, but you're going to get sick of it by the time you're done publishing it. And that's just before you put the shrink wrap on. After the shrink wrap's on, you're going to do conventions and demos and tournaments and things like that. So you're probably going to play it 300, 400, 500 times before it's said and done.
What's the highest number you guys have played your own game? Anybody? Let's play an outbidding warrior.
Okay.
How many times have you played your outbidding game?
It's probably getting close to 300 times.
300 times. All right. Can anybody beat that?
Oh, yeah.
No, I can't.
No.
All my games together?
No.
Yeah,
Just
all my games together.
But he did say you've got a game, so he says 300 for one game here. Anybody beat that? No?
Yeah, I probably can, but I don't know how many times I've played Meeple. It probably would be a sign of some kind of psychiatric disorder, so I'm not sure I can really say that, but it's been a 5-year process, and there's days where I play 7 times.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it does add up.
But I'll
Okay.
tell you this is just an aside, is that one of the things I learned with Meeple, because there was a whole period where it was this struggle to find test players. Making a solo mode can be so valuable, because if you can create a compelling solo mode and then start to really like it, then you can trick yourself kind of into doing the work that polishes the game, and then you can play it competitively or whatever.
It makes a great stretch goal as well.
Yeah, wait, I have to tell you, if I have 2 young kids, and they do play games, but they don't play the games often that I want to play. And if a game is on Kickstarter and it does not have a solo option, I'm not saying I don't buy it, but I do hone in on games that offer a solo option.
Right.
And I do play a lot of games solo in my house. My wife is not a board gamer. So that's a great point. I appreciate that. But to return to my original question, I do want to hear from, no, it's fine. I want to hear from all of you guys. If you have something to offer, where did you go for help? Resources, websites, groups. You say that all 4 of you play together. How did you guys, meet up?
Oh, okay. I'll
Go right ahead.
Yeah, because I think that, I've been probably in one of the things, I don't know, how many of you guys are from in and around Atlanta? Okay. Atlanta is a mecca of sorts, as far as game designers, developers.
It's just an embarrassment of riches of game.
Atlanta is ridiculous. I lived in New York City and went to Neutral Ground all the time, and had a gaming community that was focused on the location. In Atlanta, I mean, we're everywhere. We come together every once in a while for big things in Atlanta, which Atlanta can sustain. And there's weekly meetups and all sorts of stuff in Atlanta. So for us, we probably have an advantage over somebody living in even a town like Austin, Texas, or something like that, that doesn't necessarily have. I've been to Austin, Texas, and played games with people in Austin, Texas, but they don't have even the community we do. So, asking us that question, we have a skewed perspective, I think.
Sure.
So that said, I started game development and learning how to do stuff like that by working for Decipher. and there were a group of us back in the late 90s, early 2000s that worked on the Lord of the Rings TCG, Star Wars CCG, things like that, and we were playtesters and sometimes contributing developers. Like we would make, design a card and turn it in. We never really got any credit for anything like that. A couple of the guys from that group of mine, one of the guys is still local. His name's Will Raymond. Eventually he'll be on this panel because he's going to get a game published soon. Will Raymond went and worked for Decipher until Decipher collapsed. And that's a story for another day. And another guy, Trevor McGregor, now works for Renegade and games in Colorado. And so those guys, so that was kind of where I came into it. And then you start meeting people just by playing. And I think the three of us, me and Jason and Dave, we owe a debt to a guy named Adam Whitney, and they keep pulling us together because he had a regular stuff like that. There's a guy floating around outside. I don't even know why he's not at least sitting in the panel. This guy named Steve Avery, he's a powerhouse when it comes to it. So we in Atlanta have had the advantage of we can have weekly meetups. We all met Joseph, a couple of guys who have a company called Keymaster. They are out of Athens, and they've published four games now?
I think 3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 games. And they have a monthly meetup at a place called the Rook and Pawn downtown Athens. And we go, everyone, you go pretty much every time, don't you?
I try to. It just depends. But yeah, Athens and as well. It's got
So,
great.
Yeah, so we have a family, a loose family of people to play test games with and things like that before we take it to the general public. And so that's that. Now, as far as if you want to do this, something I would recommend doing, because this helps, is giving yourself a collection of components. You can go to a Game Crafter. Go to Game Crafter and order a bunch of blank cards, a bunch of blank tiles. You can go to education websites and I bought a tub of multicolored cubes, plastic cubes, for $21. I still haven't used them all. You can go get Meeples. Legos are great. You can get Legos that build all sorts of things
mess around with.
Exactly. So just go do all that sort of stuff and have a collection so that when you have that moment like I did that one morning and got up, I had dice available, I had cards available, I had all the things that I needed available to just scramble and put it together. Like Dave said, it wasn't pretty, but I had the components, so I wasn't scrambling to do it, right? Get yourself a collection of multicolored charts, just paper, index cards, stuff like that.
If I can just jump in real fast on what Will said. In my hand are the non-printed components of this game, Fallen Flags. And I am going to tell you that the cubes in this bag are about 17 years old. Will is right. Here in the Atlanta metro, there's an embarrassment of riches. You can play every single day of the week somewhere in this area. I started game design in Chicago, Illinois, where despite the size of the city and the size of the population, gaming was very scattered and hard to do, especially if you lived on the south side. And my game design start happened at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park called The Blind Pig. And we met and played board games there on Sunday. It was an hour train ride for me from the south side to Lincoln Park to play. And I made friends with a guy from Elmhurst, Illinois, which is about an hour and a half drive from the south side. And we started designing. And there was no such thing as the Game Crafter back then. There was no such thing as Meeple Madness. There was no such thing as any of these places where you could just go buy that kind of stuff. So we actually had a contact at Mayfair Games, and we pooled our money and bought cubes in bulk and parceled them out in shares. And that's why I literally, these cubes I have came from my allotment, which cost me, I think, about $12. And that bought me about 100 cubes. But there are a lot of those kind of resources. So indeed, that's a great place. But yes, index cards, card stock. Go to Michael's and get those little wooden. I've done games using the little wooden blocks and made dice out of them. Just anything you can get your hands on. Because as Dave pointed out, if you don't make a thing, your idea is not going to move.
Let me hit you with this. Each one thing that you wish you had known before you went down this path of game creation.
Well, I can say, just to piggyback on what you were just saying, that prototyping quickly is so important. When I first started designing games, I spent so much time in a journal and so much time in my thoughts and thinking over a project and kind of thinking about it for weeks and then building up to the playtest session and creating the components and then finally creating that space to play the game and then just having an experience of complete disappointment. And so that part of the problem that was happening for me was that without having actually play tested it right away, the idea wasn't really anchored to anything in the physical space. And so by play testing, so my philosophy now is to just play test immediately.
Yeah.
And so I guess that would be the biggest thing. And if I had done that from the beginning, I think I would have designed a lot more productively, especially in those first few years.
That's my exact same experience as well. And I want to speak to your last question, if that's okay, real quick. It's actually going to be the reverse of that. So when I first started, I didn't think to go out and read blogs or talk with other game. I didn't know other game designers at the time, to be honest with you. And so it was a lot of trial and error and maybe a little bit of ignorance. So I still, to this day, couldn't tell you. The only website I'm aware of is my own, because before I published, I wanted to have something worthwhile on my website, so I started publishing advice that hard lessons learned, like what Joseph was talking about, to share with other designers. But there's actually a young lady here. I met her at AWA last year. Her name is Elise, and she has a supervillain game that she's demoing. She's a guest at the con as well. And she's just started out. And one lesson I learned from her is that there are a ton of resources out there. And a lot of people, a lot of very successful game designers are blogging and talking about their Kickstarter processes and things like that. And when she started sending me all these links, I'm like, well, these exist? That would have been really nice. So I encourage you to check out her game. It's called Book of Villainy, and I encourage you to ask her about these resources. Because she's here. She's here right now.
Yes, she is here.
Okay, what is her name one more time? Elise.
Elise Scott. She has the Book of Villainy. She has the candy.
Oh, yeah.
She has the candy. So if you see anybody demoing with a big bowl of candy, a sister with an afro, she does that.
And she would be
And
willing
she got
to
to
provide these resources,
Oh, yeah,
like a list of websites?
she has lots of website blogs and things.
Oh, I got it. Let's see.
To answer your question directly, your first question, the question you just asked, I wish I had learned, and I'm still learning, how to simplify. Like Will, I am a fan of heavy games. And by their nature, they get nice and dense. Secondly, I am an attorney. And so thinking sometimes gets, if A, then B, and you will not pledge, hypothecate, or sell in terms of thinking. Dave and I, we've worked on some things together, both in terms of being part of the playtest team for some of Dave's games, and then Dave working with me on this game, has helped me understand that elegance and simplicity make a great game. The less you have to explain, the less rules you have to lay down, the less exceptions to the rules that you have to lay down, the better. And every time you can strip that away, you're getting that much closer to it. Now, some games just, you can't do that. If you're doing a World War II simulation, you have to sacrifice some of that. But if you're doing a game with more of a general appeal, or you're trying to shoot for a general appeal, you have to continually think about that. And I'm still learning it, because I will tell you, I have no reason to camouflage the truth. Dave and I worked on this yesterday and stripped a whole bunch of mess out yesterday. And we worked on this game for 1.5 years. Yes. And we stripped stuff out yesterday. that made the game better.
Well, as Joseph said, you got to kill your darlings. So
Yes.
I was trying not to actually say that.
Yes.
Because I got a pretty horrified reaction from the last
oh, sorry about that.
But no, that's absolutely, yeah,
Listening.
that's absolutely, you gotta kill your darling, because there's something, yeah, like he said, you fall in love with, like, well, that's just so awesome and so cool, and then you shut mess, but it doesn't work. It makes the thing complicated, makes it clunky, slows it down, and then you're like, well, am I gonna kill this whole thing just because I love this piece? And that makes no sense.
Yeah, and Jason's also kind of alluded to something that I've kind of observed meeting a lot of game designers, and that is there's no wrong way to build. I mean, there are more effective ways to build, and that's what you're going to find is what the most effective way for you is. But I've also noticed the day job of the person or their past experiences speak heavily to what their design style is going to be like. Jason's a lawyer. He kind of talked about how that comes together. Very clear, understandable rules, very precise. I'm a software developer, and so that's where the elegance comes in. What's the least amount of steps to get people to the experience I want? You know, how quickly can we get them there? How easily can we get them there? All about the elegance. And I know other people that, you know, their profession or their past experiences heavily dictates their design style, not only how they go about building the game, but then how the game actually plays and the rules for it. So,
Bill, anything down there that you wish you to know?
Yeah, I'm going to go in a completely different direction because I didn't Kickstart anything and I didn't self-publish anything. All my stuff, I have I guess you'd call that acquaintance. This guy that I know peripherally, but he has a famous line. You guys know this guy, and he said once upon a time, very frankly, he just deadpan said, "Hell is other people." He was, and here's what I wish I had known. I wish I had known. I wish I was better at the. Like I'm a marketing guy, and I'm still not 100% sure how to deal with publishers, distributors, grousers, people who will pledge $1 on a Kickstarter campaign just so they can complain about something they have no idea what to deal with. So I wish I knew. I wish that's something I'm learning now is how to. When to counter those people, when to let them slide, when to be diplomatic, when to tell them to shut up, which you should not do very often. An example, Mythos Tales, when it first came out, October 2016, was rife with errors. It had many errors. I'm not going to go into the details of where those errors came from, but I can assure you they were not mine. So it was somewhat of a disappointment to me. I mean, I had a published game, people liked it, it still ranked pretty well on the Board Game Geek and aggregates and stuff like that, but it was flawed. I actually did 6 pages of errata for the game, and it was the publisher told me to make sure that I said that it was unofficial errata, but I errated the game. I can't do anything about all the typos and layout errors and things like that, which make me nuts. Because okay, but I could do something about the content so that the game could be playable. Gray Fox Games, a publisher out of I think North Carolina, has picked it up and is doing a second edition with the corrected errata. So, me and Hal sort of run the Mythos Tales page on Facebook, and immediately, once the second edition was announced and it was doing well, immediately people coming in and all they want to do is complain. Well, so I bought the first edition, so what are you going to do about the fact that I have a bad product and you guys have put out a second edition? What are you going to do for it? Nothing. If you want, I have put the errata out. You can print it out and carry it around with your first edition game. Or you can go buy the second edition and spend your money again to get the corrected edition. I'm not doing anything for you. But those people exist. And that's all they go, they just want to complain. And I've said nothing to these people who are on, I haven't said anything to them. Hal hasn't said anything to them, the publisher hasn't said, nobody's answered them, because what's the point? right? What's the, I mean, but I wish I knew how to, I wish I knew how to deal with those people better. So that, yeah, that's the.
Yeah, well, it's actually to a question that hasn't been asked, but I think it's an incredibly important thing for people to keep in mind when you're working on a game and you want to publish a game, whether it's through another publisher or self-publisher. And that is, well, I guess it could be a lesson learned kind of thing, and that is, your game is never going to be done. You have to just accept that it's done enough at some point. I've been called out on a mistake for calling out certain famous sci-fi directors for talking about their obsession with always redoing their work 20-some years later. So I'm not going to name names or throw anyone under a bus, but sometimes you just have to accept that it's done enough, it's good enough. And most people, the vast majority of them, aren't going to see all the terrible mistakes that you see in your product. Because odds are in favor they're going to have a great time and they're going to love it. And you're the only one that's obsessed with these little flaws. And that's nothing to do with typos and glaring errors are a totally different story. So I don't mean to.
Well, typos are typos are relatively minor. People see them and then don't say too many things about them or anything like that. It was the errata which was the main thing.
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example. This is what you're talking about.
But yeah, the short story is when it comes to the actual design and mechanics of the game, at some point you just have to decide that this is right, this is right.
Yeah, if I can glom onto that real quick while he's looking at that, showing us that terribly printed page.
Look at that. And I do layout. There's space here. What the right? All right.
And I will go on to that to say, also accept the idea that your game is not for everyone.
That's very true.
The truth of the matter is you have to decide what your game is. For example, I do train games. I like train games very much. There are people, if you say the word train game, they will not play. There's a game called Russian Railroads, which is only thematically about trains, and people won't play. Dave does not like train games, which is why he gives me the grudging admiration for the work we've done, because he doesn't like them. I had to make that decision that yes, I like train games, and there are people who like train games, and I'm going to make train games. Does that mean I get to come up with the next Splendor? Well, no. But I'm fine with that. And going to that about people who complain, when you play your game in front of people, you have to learn, and I had to learn it, and I'm sure all these others, that a lot of people have great feedback, and there are people who have terrible feedback. And you just have to sift it out.
Because everybody's feedback is great, but it doesn't mean that it's right for you.
That doesn't mean it's right for you. And sometimes folks, again, if you're not careful, you're trying to make a game for everybody.
Then you have a game for nobody.
And then you have a game for nobody. Because the truth is, people come to games from many different places. And if you bring, like I bring this game in front of people whose previous knowledge base is Monopoly, not to denigrate that game in any way.
You should have.
I'll spare you the lecture on that subject. The thing is that they're going to say, if they get it and enjoy it, they're going to say, oh, that was cool, but you should throw in some random events. Because that's the knowledge base they know. They know chance and community chess. And their enjoyment of that game, in part, comes from the random that's there. Well, this game doesn't have chance. We did have events before. It's a different story. But again, you have to decide what your game is. And sift your feedback around, does it serve the purpose of actually making this game that I want to make better?
And in fact, real quick, if that's okay. So, and an important thing when getting feedback from playtesters is to remember that it's just like theater and stage. When you're on stage, they want to like you. And when you put a game in front of somebody, they want to like your game. And so it's going to be very hard for them to give you good or useful or critical feedback. And so you need to set that stage for them. And I learned it's not enough to say, no, please be mean, or please tell me what needs it. Because people are that unconscious, they don't want to be rude or mean. So asking the right questions is what works.
Very good.
And so the question that I found that I go for to start with and sets that tone, and it's at an unconscious level for somebody, is what got in the way of the fun? And what that does is that question opens up that mental door for them to be critical and feel safe about being critical.
I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to, if we have some time left over, I'll let you have some closing remarks. But do we have any questions for the panel? Anybody? If you can ask a specific person or just a general question.
Well, one thing I had was a comment was what you just last touched on was very, very important because I'm in Will's game group and I know that the people that I play with, there are certain people that won't play games that have too high a level of chance with dice rolling or whatever. It needs to be just, bar strategy. So I think that was really important to hear. It's like, yeah, so you may make a game that and that's it. You're going to make a game and not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody's going to like a train game. Not everybody's going to like, a worker placement resource management game. Interesting. Good stuff.
Yes.
Do you have games we can play test here today?
You know what? You jumped on me here. I was. I tell you what. We'll skip to that part. What I want to do is, are you gentlemen? I know most of you are actually going to be set up out here. What I want to do for those of you who attended the event here is, if you are willing to come and play with them, I'm going to provide all of them the raffle tickets for the game giveaways. I'm going to instruct these guys to give some bonus tickets away if you give them the code word blind pig. Heard that it? Yes, blind pig. You were here, you heard it. Tell any of these guys blind pig and give them some extra raffle tickets that they can turn into the thing. But I believe all four of you, yes, are going to be out here demoing?
Demos going.
We have the bright greenish yellow demo table stands. Look for those. I know you're over here on this side, and Jason will get you set up somewhere.
Yeah.
Joseph, I know you're out there.
Yeah.
And Will, are you already out there? I think
No.
not yet. We'll get you set up. If any of you are interested in testing some of their games or playing some of what you're seeing up here, we are happy to make that happen, okay? So does that help you?
Yes.
All right.
In addition, there will be an Addictive Alchemy tournament at, I believe, 3 o'clock. It's free to enter, teach you how to play beforehand, and there will be board games as prizes. So stop on by and learn how to play.
I'm scheduled to demo Fallen Flags at 2, but I'll be around. And if we do play at 2, I'll try to make it quick so that you can have time to do this because it's real good.
Any questions? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
It's not a question, but when you guys are talking about resources that people that are making games, one that we actually found, and like Dr. knows, it's called the White Box. It's kind of like build your own board game.
By Atlas.
Was that by Jonathan Liu?
I don't know who does it, but it's published by Atlas. We actually found it at Oxford. It's kind of like a bunch of like blocks and dice and chips and all sorts of
April Fool's joke. I know the guy who did that.
Yeah.
And it actually has turned out to sort of be a.
But it's really cool because
People
like
like
if
it.
you don't have like resources where you can get meeples and stuff like that.
Everything's white in it, right?
No,
it's
it's,
like
it's all multicolored.
Oh, it's all
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They originally did one that was everything in it was white, blank, and they sold a ton.
Yeah, it's got like a book in it full of like essays about game design. I popped the box open, probably had something really simple in about like an hour and a half or so, but it was cool. It's about $40.
Yeah, and Amazon also has some great resources. I constantly buy blank white cards for things like 2 to 500.
You can get blank pieces too if you go to any of the game events like Game Fest here in Atlanta twice a year. They have a flea market where gamers actually bring in old games that they don't play anymore, and put them out, and usually fairly cheap, so they're previously played games. And you can buy a game that just for the parts, just to get the pieces out of it.
I never play Pandemic anymore because I have used all of the cubes. I have an old Pandemic game I never play because I'm just using all the cubes and everything else, and all,
Any additional questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have this question about playtesting. When you feel like you have something ready to go, what decision leads there, and is there any kind of one piece of information you got? What's the best piece of information you got from a playtest session?
I've playtested 2 Espionage, in fact, and another game that I have called Routine. Both of these games, I thought I had this brilliant idea. Both of them were pretty good ideas, right? But for whatever reason, I don't. And this goes back to what Dave was saying about sieving, or Jason said, sieving what people. I have had somewhat of a different experience where I have had people sit there and were looking for some flaw in my game, and if you're looking for it, you'll find it sometimes. However, sometimes somebody will start saying something, and you just immediately know that's wrong. They're coming from a wrong space, and usually it harks back to what they're saying, that they have in mind some sort of mechanic that they want to instill onto your game, and your game is not that game. Your game is not going to incorporate that particular mechanic. So, you know, you gotta be diplomatic and let those people say what they're going to say, but don't take that advice. You know, if it's going to be. However, routine and espionage had a mechanic, and I liked the mechanic in both of them. But what happened was, here's the deal: the more you play test, you will get repeated feedback. So once a couple of people from different things say the same thing, that's when you gotta start listening to that and go, oh, you know what? He said it, she said it. Maybe they're onto something, and then you may have to revisit and stuff like that. Both of those games are currently completely scrapped. I mean, the whole conceptually, and a lot of the pieces are still there. But and what's awesome too is that when I finally got feedback that I could really use, like a lot of people kept saying stuff about the espionage, about this card play mechanic that I had. They kept saying, you should do this, you should do this, but nobody gave me an alternative. They just said something was wrong. At the last Proto Atlanta ATL, a month or two ago, this guy, and I'm giving props where props are due, his name is Mike Mihielsick. He said something about an alternative. And when he said that, I was just, I was like, oh, I got to go back to the drawing board and redo a lot of stuff. But that's it. That's where it's going to go. And so I don't know if that answers your question, Patrick, but the more you play test, the more you will become able to recognize usable feedback and recognize unusable feedback. The more you'll be able to, your skin will grow thick. Because you got to be able to take criticism, whether it's good or whether it's good or just crap. You got to be able to take it all with a smile on your face, and you don't tell that person, I'm not going to do that. You just move along and you don't do it.
And if I could just tack one thing on top of that, that is true regardless of whom it comes from. I have received ludicrous feedback from people who should definitely know better. I'm not naming any names. I think Dave knows who I'm talking about.
It was me.
No, it wasn't me. It was somebody who you would think would really know. Of course, that works the other way around. Part of the challenge about playtesting is you got to do it, and you got to do a lot of it.
You got to enjoy it.
And you got to enjoy it, but also you have to balance it out, because you can get sick of your game if you're not careful. Your playtesters can get sick of the game if you throw it out all the time. The more the diversity of playtesters you can have, the better, for several reasons. Number one, it's other people. Number two, it's useful to have people get into the game that have never seen it. Because after a while, in your own head, you get used to what you've done. For example, the changes that we've made yesterday, we did a playthrough with the changes, and I sucked at my own game because I couldn't think out of the box of what I already thought about.
And if I can also just say one quick thing about that before we move on. Not only pay attention to what they say, but pay attention to what they do. Sometimes you get the best feedback from the nonverbals.
That's true. That's very true.
So Addictive Alchemy is actually a deck destruction game, so you start out with cards and then your deck gets smaller. And sometimes you can gain cards back, but that's not the general progression or flow. And the original rules was, just like with the deck builder, when you gain a new card, it would go in your discard pile. And okay, that's consistent with deck builders, that's what people will know or expect. But I found over the course of playtesting that over and over again, every time someone gained a card, they would just naturally put it in their hand. And so I'm like, that's the opposite of what I expected, but okay, give them what they want. And it actually made the game better and opened up new tactics and diversity in the game that I'd never accounted for. So definitely look for what they do as well as what they say.
Yeah. And he added enough, I don't need to say anything.
Well, we are pretty much out of questions. Is it a fast one?
Probably not.
If it goes to Will, I've determined it's, not big on Will, but if it goes to Will, we may run out of time.
Probably
Because
not.
Will, what I want to do is I want to ask you four, is it okay if they come to you after the panel's over to discuss,
Oh,
to discuss things with you?
Okay.
Are you okay with that? That I was told to stop this hard, so I want to make sure we do that.
Okay.
My last question to you guys is this. You're going to be out here demoing your game. We talked about playtesting. Do any of you have a game right now where these individuals can come and are you at a point where you might be able to use some help from them
Oh, yeah.
in terms of feedback and stuff like that? So what I would ask all of you is hunt them down out here, look for the yellow signs that say demo, and obviously play their games if you can. If you have questions for them, that if you can hit them up there so that we can end on time. I want to thank you guys for doing this. I know as a board game player, I'm a writer, but I know the energy you put in to create something from scratch. And I want to tell you as a game player that I appreciate, even if I don't know the game creator, I know that there has to be a lot. You don't just throw a game out and it's ready to go from scratch. I know that there's playtesting, critiquing, simplifying, things like that. So I want to thank you guys for what you do. I love games. And I wouldn't have games if there weren't people like you doing this. So for the last 2 minutes, I'll give you guys the time to split it. It's about 30 seconds each.
I'll take my
Any closing remarks?
30 seconds just to riff
Yeah,
on
please.
what you just said. And forgive me if this religious imagery is offensive to you. I don't mean it to be. The Bible says that God made man out of the dust of the earth, and that he then breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. It is my personal belief that the creative enterprise is God's work, that it's the moment where God gave all of us a piece of himself, the ability to make something. Birds sing, but that's the way they talk. Beavers make dams, but that's just how they shelter themselves. We get the gift of making board games and singing songs and writing novels, and it's a beautiful thing, but it is a bunch of hard work. God didn't give us the poof factor. It is hard work.
Yeah, I would just say that finding something, for me anyway, just as a game player as well, and wanting to play meaningful games, I think that figuring out what is meaningful about your endeavor, why are you making this? Why are you bringing this to the world? Why is this game important? Figuring that out can help you approach it with integrity and try to really bring something into the world that is new and that that has a meaningful quality. Yeah. So I guess that's all I'd say.
It's certainly not the money. I'm on a practical note. I'm going to go out and have lunch.
Yes.
At lunch, I'm going to Kroger to buy some beer. But then I'm going to come back in an hour or two, and I'm going to set up. And I definitely the game that Zafty is going to publish next year has about 120 tiles. I'll explain when I'm teaching the game. I have to come up with about 80 more tiles, and so. Yeah, give me some ideas because you'll play the game if you play the game, and then that's where I'm at with that. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I'm here because, and I'm doing what I do with this because I love people and I love community. So if you got questions, please reach out. I'm happy to answer them. You grab my card if you want to mail me later or something like that. I mentioned Elise earlier, and I saw her by herself at AWA demoing her game. It looked disturbingly like Monopoly. It looks nothing like that now, but I've gone out of my way to make sure that she's got all of the support and advice that she can use, and so I offer the same to you.
I'd like to remind all of you, the game library, if you check Games Out to Play, you get raffle tickets. You get one per play, but with these gentlemen, if you will come play their games and talk to them, they're going to be given a lot of tickets. They can sort of give them out as they feel.
Yeah, make sure to give me those extras. I've got some. I'd like your extras.
And tonight at 8, every half hour and on the hour, we're doing an announcement for the tickets to give away games. And I think 2 or 3 are actually out there to be given away. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Thank all of you for attending.
And thank you guys.
And please come hunt them down out here, okay?
Thank you guys.